I'm joining you today from my home near Coffs Harbour, where I'm on Gumbaynggirr land. I would like to pay my deep respects to our Gumbaynggirr elders for the past and the present and emerging leaders who for the last 250 years have been educating our community that our existence and indeed our very survival is dependent on how we care for country. This message of physical and spiritual connection from Indigenous peoples from around the world is now more important than ever and is so critical for the intersecting climate movement and civil rights movements that so many of us are actively participating in now. Today is all about the palette of possibilities. This is a resource that came about from a contract that AAEE New South Wales has been delivering for the New South Wales Environmental Trust. And this has been all around redesigning and reframing their environmental education grants program. It's been a privilege for me to be part of this team with the A2E New South Wales Executive Officer, Jem Hansen, Les Robinson, Lynn McLaughlin, and Wendy Goldstein. And I'd like to thank them all for all of their amazing work on this project. Now, just a few housekeeping things for how today is going to run. If you have any questions throughout Les's presentation, please type them up in the chat function that you're probably all very familiar with since COVID has pushed us all onto Zoom, whether we wanted to or not. Please also keep your microphone muted. I can see everyone's doing that. So you all have wonderful Zoom etiquette. And that will allow Les to get through all this amazing information in the limited time that we have. We will have a break somewhere in the session, a 5 or 10 minute break, which is really important for us to do the things we need to do to stay focused online. I'd also like to introduce today that we have our amazing president, Sue Martin. Jem Hansen, as I've already mentioned, is our executive officer, and Mel Sellen, our amazing project officer. Without this team of very dedicated, passionate, hardworking, amazing environmental educators, this resource wouldn't be here, and so much of what the association does and the amazing work that's being done wouldn't be happening today. So I'd just like to thank them all for their just wonderful efforts for us, for all of us environmental educators. So, and I'd also like to introduce that Jen Ringburner is the coordinator of the Western Rivers Environmental Education Network. And this webinar is thanks to Jen, because she reached out to Sue in terms of how she could support that regional network, and this is how this webinar all came about. So I'd like to now hand over to Les Robinson and hope you all enjoy the session.
Thank you very much, Erica. Now, I want to propose that today, if I was to ask you a question, and if the answer was yes, could you all do this? Right up to your screen, just a great big yes. Really big yes, I can't possibly miss. Good, okay. If the answer is no, could you do this? Right up to your screen, great big no. No, that's right, no. Very good, okay. Now, and if the answer is I don't know, can you do this? Don't know. Very good, everybody. Now, today, could we, I want to give you all permission to stand up if you want. So those of you who just at any point in time feel like sick of sitting down, want to stand up or pace backwards and forwards, it's perfectly okay. Also, I'm not going to insist that you're stuck there the whole time. So if you want to stand up and walk away for a while, that's perfectly okay. You can probably hear what's happening. So you don't need to be stuck in front. Is that okay? Is that okay, everyone? Really good. Another thing is, I think that chat is just beaut on Zoom. So today, if you want to just say something, get something off your chest or make a remark about anything, would you be okay just to chat? Just chat it. You want to make a remark? Just say it. Just say what you're thinking, folks. It's really fun to have workshops where there's an independent chat stream going on at the same time. So please feel free to do that. Also today, it's going to be valuable if you're on your speaker view. So it's great to see all our faces occasionally, but I want to show you stuff. So we might be mainly on speaker view. Is that okay? Good work, everyone. Okay, good. So what's going to happen today will be that I do a bit of speaking, and then we'll have an open discussion. And the open discussion will happen by you guys chatting questions or comments down, and we'll have a see what we're creating. And Erica is going to curate those and pull out some questions that I can answer in the second half of our time together. So it will be a kind of a conversation. Are you okay with that? Goody, excellent work. All right, so settle down. I am going to talk for a little while. So just settle back, have a cup of coffee. All you need to do is listen at this point. I'm going to share screen with you. Here is this document called The Palette of Possibilities, which is a neat title, don't you think? And what's it about? It's about strategy. It's about our strategy for change. How many of you are in the business of designing behavior change efforts or projects? How many of us do that kind of thing? You know, we want people to be doing stuff as a result of our efforts, because we think that those doings will result in fixing environmental problems or creating a better environmental future. So we want more koalas in this valley. We want fewer foxes in this valley. We want all that yummy organic waste not to go to landfill. We want people work on water conservation or energy conservation, all sorts of things. Those are the actions. That's the desired environmental future. People need to act for that to occur. And our job is to get them to act. So that's what today's about. What gets people to act? Now, I want to start by referring to this. Who's ever heard of program logic? Anyone ever heard of program logic? Some of us still remember the days of program logic. It used to be compulsory. We all got trained in it about 10 years ago. Or outcomes hierarchy. Who's heard of outcomes hierarchy? You know, it sounds unbelievably boring, doesn't it? But it is a useful thinking model. So up here, I've made a little mini outcomes hierarchy for just generally thinking about designing change. We make activities and products. We organize field days and barbecues. We put up banners in main streets. We stick stuff on Facebook. So those are our activities and products. And we do them because we want people to respond. We want to see responses. We want people to come to field days. We want people to visit council and walk away with a darling little plant and plant it in the yard. We want landholders to put the right baits out for their foxes. So we want there to be immediate action. But immediate action isn't the same as sustained behavior change. Often the immediate action is, yeah, people, they respond to a Facebook post, or they have one conversation at home, or maybe they unpack their Fogo caddy and stick it on their bench. They do a little something, but it's not the same as a sustained change in behavior. At that point, a whole lot of stuff can get in the way. Really designing change is about tackling all that other stuff that's got in the way of people really permanently installing change in their lives. And so there's something in this space here. Here is what I mentioned before. That's that top level environmental outcome. That's why we're doing it, why we've been given some money to work on our projects. And to get that happening, we need to have a strategy. And part of that is behavior. We want to change behaviors. Often tackling things like, more koalas in a valley isn't just about farmers going and not chopping down trees. There may be a number of strategies that have to come together to make a program of action. So we might want traffic to slow down. We might want an action group formed. We want people going and doing audits of their properties. So, the change to the big level outcomes always involves a pattern of efforts. There's a few things that we need to put in place. Often it's a bit of infrastructure or a new tool is broadly adopted, but there is always some behaviour change as well. This is the part I want to focus on now, how we get behaviour change happening. The interesting bit is what's not up here. It's this part here. Strategies. What are the strategies? Sure, we're making stuff and we're having events, but those events have to do more than just people come to the event and take home a little plant. We have to think about what is the strategy that causes sustained change in behaviour. This bit here is the difference between success and failure, and it's a whole world of thinking. All the time, I see groups working on change. And one thing I do, to be perfectly honest, folks, see is not enough thinking about strategy. I see strategies too simplistic. The most common one is, if we gave people some money, they'd do the right thing. Or if we told people how important it was, they'd do the right thing. Or if we threaten people, they'll do the right thing. We tend to see so often quite simple strategies here. As we look around, often it's the biggest programs, the multi-billion-dollar programs that have the simplest, poorest sets of strategies. So one way around that is to have a broad palette of options to think about as a kind of checklist to stimulate us at the very start and to wonder, what are the other strategies are there? To think about these other strategies. So we created this document called Palette of Possibilities. And I want to just swing you through it now. Just look at them and not spend a lot of time on them. It's a very brief document. It's highly illustrated. Its function is just to inspire and get us thinking about the full palette of strategies that are available. So I'm going to swing through that. And then afterwards, talk a little bit about our process, how we design. So can you all see Palette of Possibilities? Can you see that slide? Good. All right. Now I'm just going to everyone just close your eyes for a moment. I'm just going to leap ahead 12 pages. Okay, page 12. Now, can you see a diagram that looks really, really complicated? Good. So what we try to do is to put in one place all the main strategies. So I'm not going to look at this diagram, but there you can see there's two kinds. There's systemic strategies and there's behavioural strategies. Behavioural strategies are ones that address the individual, that engage with the individual. Systemic strategies are ones that might bypass the individual and work at the system level. That may be about putting in some infrastructure. You know, if you're in waste management, the right bin in the right place is often a solution all by itself. You virtually don't have to engage with people when you put the right infrastructure in place. So that's an example of a systemic change, of systemic strategy. And then there are behavioural ones. So I just want to have a little look at these various strategies with you now. Let's start by having a little look at systemic strategies. If you're designing change for your project, could you change the physical environment? Could you put in infrastructure that makes it easy to act? If we want people to get more exercise, they need nice bike paths. They need walking paths that are in the right place, that are a pleasure to visit. So what infrastructure is missing that would make a difference? Could we create it as part of our project? Infrastructure, if you can do it, is fantastic because it's a permanent environmental alteration and it drives behaviour long into the future. Obviously costs more, but it's sustained. What about natural infrastructure? Sometimes we can tackle problems by retrofitting bits of nature. So here's an example here, bee hotels or birdie houses, bird homes. We can create little bits of natural infrastructure that might help us be more likely to achieve the long-term change. There's also infrastructure that just helps us be a community and have conversations together and focus on issues. So there is social interaction infrastructure. The right seating in the right location can help people have conversations that lead to change and focus their attention and be really sustained and mark the place in a way that makes it look different. What if we were going to use hard infrastructure like asphalt as a communication tool and put sustained messages out there that people continually are reminded of the right thing to do? The practical messages that explain what is the right action. So could we borrow bits of hard infrastructure to do our communicating for us? These aren't just communications, these are changes to the environment that last for a long time into the future. I love this one here. This one here is two streets in the United Kingdom competing against each other for energy savings, and the results of each street have been stenciled onto the street. So now everyone who walks down that street is having a conversation about energy conservation, not just the people who were in the program. What about infrastructure whose sole role is to create inspiration, to create hope or possibility? It's got a really valuable role. You know, and I keep seeing great work done by land care groups everywhere, but no one knows they've done it. No one knows there is this community movement at work, changing the environment and rebuilding things. Imagine if they left behind these inspirations that would make it clear that we are the kind of community that values little terns or values koalas. It's a permanent change to the character of the place, and the people who live in it are changed by these pieces of infrastructure. So it's really worth thinking about. Could we leave this behind as a legacy of our work? Another really powerful systemic change is to leave groups behind, to bring people together and help them form little seeds of organisation. So friends of groups, cooperative purchasing groups, innovation hubs, community gardens, repair centres, environmental care groups. Could we help nourish those groups, make them stronger, or start new groups? If we start a group and it's well run, it might still be there 10 years from now, long after we've gone and worked on something else. And it's in its community, it's active, it's a voice, it's an identity, it's making permanent change. There's also a beautiful thing that happens when human beings come together in a collective effort, and that's they become courageous. Their fears drop away. They become capable of quite extraordinary things. So can we help people work together? It's a really powerful kind of systemic change. A somewhat similar thing is to create a network or alliance of existing groups. There may be a catchment. There could be lots of different groups in the catchment all working for common causes, but they never get together. They don't interact. They don't feel like they're a movement. They don't share resources. So could we bring them together and create a network or an alliance so that we feel part of a movement? It can be a very powerful tool. One of the most powerful examples of it is, it's called Communities for Children. There are the funded organisations covering whole regions, and all the child welfare related organisations get together regularly. They share resources, they learn together, they spot problems, they run their own projects. They're just a wonderful example of a empowering alliance. So is that missing from your equation? Could it make a difference? Another thing that we often forget about is sometimes environmental problems are held in place by really unhelpful administrative systems and planning processes. So keep an eye out for that. If there's something in the planning system that's making it really hard for people to do the right thing, then maybe that's the angle of attack that we need to focus on. Forget everything else and just fix the system so it works for people. There are a lot of very poorly designed regulations out there. So that's when it's something we can work on. It's a powerful systemic change because it's a permanent change as well. It changes the environment in which people and organisations make their decisions. Another really powerful one is flows of data. Flows of data is different to knowledge or brochures. A flow of data is a continuous supply of information that tells me how we're doing. Is the problem getting better or worse? So, for example, if we want a farmer to invest in change on their land or putting in a watering system, can they get a flow of data back that tells them what is the current level of moisture in their soil, so they know how to use the system, and they continually get reinforced about how important the system is? Can we provide a way for farmers to test their soil, for example? In this example here, this image here, it's a wonderful little gizmo that can be used to remotely measure water quality in streams. So there's a flow of data that lets us measure that. Flows of data are essential for people to make choices. I might put a huge effort into making my property more sustainable, but, you know, was that wasted? I don't know, unless I've got a flow of data. Smart electricity meter is a classic example. I'm getting that flow of data that's telling me whether I'm saving money, whether my efforts are working. So is there timely data to guide decisions? If there are missing data flows, which technically are called feedback loops, if there are missing feedback loops, that's quite a powerful systemic change. Similarly related is for organizations and people to share performance data. How am I doing? Let's tell everyone how we're doing. Let's tell it, here's a Botanica cafe. It's letting everyone know how many tons of carbon it's saved through its efforts, or how much waste it's saved, or how much chemicals it's saved. People love to talk about their efforts. When we see someone being proud about what they're doing, it looks more important. Lots of other people start to realize that they could do this as well and look good because they've done it. So collecting and sharing performance data on how people are doing makes a difference. Sometimes regulation is part of the answer. For example, you know, keeping little turn breeding sites free of dogs is partly a regulatory issue. Rangers need to be out there keeping an eye on things and occasionally peeing people. So don't forget this. It's not always the right solution, but maybe it is for some of the problems that we work on. I have a wonderful quote here from a very seasoned ranger about their strategy for enforcement. This is where we capture his wisdom about the way he goes about it. Similarly related thing is exclusion zones, is making areas where certain activities are not permitted. So, and that's very important for species conservation. So is that relevant? If so, it's part of our strategy. No dog areas have actually been found to be quite effective at protecting seabirds. Now, those altogether are a collection of systemic strategies. They make sustained changes to the environments in which we human beings make our choices. Now, the second category is behavioural ones. These are ones that engage directly with the individuals who we hope to change. So, number one, absolutely, is knowing how to do the action. How do I correctly bait for foxes? How do I manage my property for koala conservation? I have no idea. I'd like to do it, but you know, you better explain it to me so I know exactly what to do, or I'm not going to know what to do, and I'm probably not going to do it. How exactly do I manage my organic waste at home? Oh yeah, I mean, I know I've got this bin, but my God, as soon as I see this bin, I'm starting to freak out about rats and smells and bugs, and you know, unless I know how to manage that, unless I'm familiar with exactly what I have to do, I'm probably not going to do it. Even small, little, tiny, niggling worries about how to do things will stop it at. People won't do it. We need to create crystal clear descriptions, depictions, videos that show someone doing it, so we can create, I can do that moments. And I can do that moment, I reckon, is the number one thing for every behaviour change project. It's where our audience, the people we hope will act, look at what we're doing and they go, okay, I see, oh, I could do that. Do you see what I did there? That, oh, I could do that. Can we create that by everything we do? It's simply, it's the threshold for change. If it doesn't happen, all the why we should do it in the world is irrelevant if people don't know how to do it. So, you know, I could talk about that forever because I think it's terrifically important, but I won't talk about it anymore. I love this little quote here. I'm just waiting for someone to tell me what to do. No, no, no. I'm waiting for someone to show me how. Don't tell me why, show me how. That's what I want to know how to do. Somewhat related to that is making it easy for people to do the right thing. Every little bit of ease we build in means more people will do it. Every bit of residual hardness and difficulty that's in an action will block people from doing it. So strip away all the complexities. Oh, it's a 30-page form. Make it a one-page form. Oh, not do 17 actions, just do one action. And here's how to do it. The easier it is to do stuff, the more likely it is for people to do it. Think about litter bins. You know, if you have a litter bin and it's 5 meters off the path, it's going to be empty. No one's going to use it. But that litter bin, if it's next to the path, if it's been designed for ease, it'll be used by people. So take easiness deadly seriously and strip away every difficulty in the way of the right action, and more people will do the thing. It's just because everyone's too busy to be fussed with complexity. Good. Another really powerful one is find passionate champions and role models and mobilize those people. There has never been a single successful action project that didn't involve a passionate role model who inspired people. People looked at that person and they said, look at their body language. I want to be them. Look how proud and excited they are when they talk about this. They're making me really want to be part of the movement. They're not telling me what to do. They're not like trying to persuade me or boss me. They're just being who they are, and I want to be like them. It's like, you know, in a school that has an eco program always has a passionate teacher. And everything else might be in place, but no passionate teacher, there's no school eco program. So who is that, the passionate person who you could find and help make them famous? So that's probably almost a compulsory ingredient of a community engagement program. Related to that is what's called social norms. And it's all social proof. And it's showing that lots of people are doing it. What could we create that will be a depiction of the fact that, hey, lots of people are doing this? Because people want to do stuff that lots of other people are doing. And if lots of other people are doing it, it must be safe. I don't have to worry. I could just do it, because if they're doing it, it must not be dangerous or tricky or stupid. So anything we do that creates that sense, like this little thing here, it's how Manly shops. It's a very simple statement. It doesn't say you should always bring a reusable bag. It says it's how we shop. It's a social norm statement. There's so many simple ways to do that. One is just by using images of lots of groovy people who are a bit like the audience, all going, yeah, we like picking up litter. We're into litter-free beaches. So, and even statistics can help. Here is Bankstown Council. 85.7% of Bankstown residents don't contaminate their recycling. Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that. Looks like in my community, people really do the right thing. I guess I'll do the right thing. That's called the social norm or social proof appeal. So it doesn't work all by itself, but when you mix it up with these other methods, it can be quite effective. It's an important component. And then there's buddies and action teams. And that's that thing about when we work with others, our fears drop away. We get motivated. We want to go the extra mile because of the people around us who we're working with. So could you create little action teams or little hubs or buddy groups to go and get things happening? Here's some Barraga Landcare created cluster groups of landholders who worked with their neighbours to control foxes. Suddenly, it's not such hard work when we do it with others. And it's social as well. We enjoy our company. So buddies and action teams, really powerful. Imagine if you're trying to make change inside your councils, inside your organisation, having a champions team that stick together and meet frequently will empower them and give them the energy to keep working together. Another thing that all by itself is powerful is people talking together. Just people get them together and just talk. Often, in fact, not often, all the time, we human beings literally have to talk ourselves into change. if we don't hear ourselves talking about it, it doesn't even exist in our worlds. We might see posters and brochures and advertisements, but unless we talk to the people around us, we haven't even taken a position. Conversation literally forces us to take a position. And then we just heard ourselves say, yeah, I think it's really important that we reduce our green waste going to landfill. I never thought about it until now, but now that I speak about it, like, yeah, you're right, it is important. I can see the point of it, you know. And then the other people around us heard us say that. So conversation really, it's like the lubricant of change. It lubricates the wheels of change in society. So people talking matters. And so social events, surprisingly, can be quite powerful. Field days, tours, walks, campfires, picnics, coffee table talks, barbecues, all those things are valuable. And they're not really valuable just because we treated it as a chance to lecture people, but of course we created opportunities for them to interact with each other, to freely converse and discuss. All we did was create the theme. It's those conversations where people themselves figure out how to change. There's a whole lot of wonderful psychology around the dynamics of conversation. But one thing, just to make the point, one thing is that we're a group of people talking about, you know, I don't know, koala conservation, a group of landholders talking about koala conservation. There'll always be one who's like, really wants to talk about what they've done. So they start talking themselves up because they're really proud of what they've done. And they want everyone to know how good they are because they're a bit of an early adopter. They start talking about how good they are. And then other people go, well, I'm just as good as you. So they start talking about how good they are. And they're all trying to compete to be, you know, to be better than each other. And so they end up talking up this whole storm about what's possible. Oh, it's a bit Machiavellian, but it's really powerful using facilitated conversations to help people change themselves. Yeah, and also it's fun, you know. Who doesn't want to go to a fireside barbecue chat event? Or a wine and dine night. How cool is that? A related and really strategic approach is called popular opinion leader method. So a simple example is, if you want dog owners to not to pick up their poo or to not walk on beaches where there's shorebirds, then get the right dog owners to go and talk to other dog owners. So recruit dog owners to go and have those conversations with other dog owners. So that's an example of a really strategic use of conversation. If you go and Google popular opinion leader method, there's lots of examples of it. It's quite an effective method. And then there are some much weaker behavioral strategies. One is incentives, giving people stuff or money. And, you know, it can get people's attention, and often people will, you know, they'll come along to get their stuff, or they'll put their hand up for some money, but it doesn't tend to drive sustained change. And there's a lot of psychology on it. It can have a temporary effect, but it tends to produce suppressed responses in future. People are less likely to do the right thing after we pay them to do it. So incentives can have a place. Like if a landholder does need $6,000 to buy an off-creek watering system, or they just can't do what they already want to do, then yeah, that's valuable. But just essentially bribing people has been shown psychologically to be not a very effective method. If we want to give people a reward, seriously, praise is the best reward. Just praise. People love to be patted on the back and to feel good. But don't give them anything with substance. Like, you know, overseas holidays, don't do it. Stuff like that. Another one is pledges or commitments. So asking people for a signed pledge. There's some psychology that it can work in certain really restricted situations. But a couple of years ago, an environment group contacted me, and they were very mystified by the fact that they'd just done an evaluation or follow-up of their pledge program. And all the people who'd been giving the pledges, when they spoke to them on the phone 6 months later, no one could remember actually having done it. It's an extraordinarily weak kind of interaction with people. And then there's giving people the right facts. So, all right, that's a bit of a challenge because so many of us are environmental educators, which kind of suggests we should be using facts to convert people. But seriously, there are very few facts that have that power. Most of the time we're telling people stuff they already know, or they know we're trying to talk them into something with facts, so they get resistant. So facts, yeah, I'd stay away from them, which I know is a bit of a radical statement. Don't rely on them too much. Instead, really focus on familiarity with the behavior, making it easy, social norm, using social norms, things like that, giving people systems to make it easy to act are way gigantically more powerful than any kind of statement about presumed facts. So yeah, so just be very cautious when you think a fact is something that's going to change people. Oh, and then there's bad news, which is, oh my God, look what you're doing. You're really stuffing things up. You should pull your socks up, get it together. It's amazing how many environmental communications are actually that. Where we feel so good about what the right thing is, that we think make them feel bad and it'll change. Well, actually, that's not what's going to happen. They actually start caring less about the environment when we use those sorts of appeals. So be very aware of messages that make people feel bad, or that are bad news messages. They tend mostly to disempower people, make people turn away and find something more pleasing and interesting to do with their time. So yeah, be very, very, very wary about that kind of appeal. It only works in one situation, really, and that's giving money. So if we make people really, really bad about some terrible environmental problem, but if you give money right now, you can feel better, then often, it really does work for fundraising, but not for much else. So be quite wary about it. Now, all those things together, that's like a little race through a lot of strategies, things that fill up this space here, that connect our on-ground, our field days and our brochures, that connect that to change up here. They're going to be connected by that strategic thinking. So we will, for our projects, think, oh, gee, what would be my strategies? I think I'll choose, I was going to do this, but no, I'm going to investigate these other strategies now. I'm going to do a bit of research, and maybe I could make an accreditation system instead. Didn't really talk about that. Maybe that would make a difference. There's lots of these alternative ways of looking at change. So now, what I just talked about then was strategies, but there's another question, folks, and that is, how do we get the strategy? It's one thing to have, oh my God, look at all these strategies. How do I know which ones we'd like to play with? And that's a different question. That's a process question. What is our process of designing our effort? A conscious process of saying, we have a problem. And let's start by saying, I don't know what the answer is. We often think, oh my goodness, I'm a professional. I'm supposed to already know the answer. I happen to be an engineer. So I already know the answer's made out of concrete. I'm just going to design the right concrete thing, and it's going to be a solution to the problem because that's what I'm good at. It's better to say, actually, I may be an engineer, but my starting point is going to be, I have not got a clue how to solve this problem, but I'm going to find out. And that's the best possible starting point. All I am going to be is curiosity and wonder about what might work, and get out there and do a little bit of preliminary research. So this takes the pressure off us. We don't have to have answers. Instead, we just have to go and make a bit of time and find out. Now, there's a whole whack of material in this Palette of Possibilities document that's about doing that initial research. And I'm not going to go through it. It actually involves a little bit of reading, like it's not all pictures, there's a bit of text. Here it is here. The preliminary, the ideal starting point, a great big question mark. I do not know what to do. And then go and seek out 3 things. Let me just see if I can blow this up. Ooh, here. Go and find 3 things here. 1, go and grab all the data, all the baseline data you can find, everything you can find about the problem, and make a great big pile of it. So we have the data. Secondly, get on Google and find out what works. All around the world, there are groups of people working on your problem, and they're finding completely different, fun and radical and unexpected and surprising ways to tackle the problem, using methods that might not occur to us. So get on Google and just see what other people are doing who are trying to tackle exactly your problem. You know, Penrith City Council put on a comedy night to launch their FOGO program. Oh my goodness, comedy night. I never thought about it until now, but that's interesting. So gather lots of raw material to inspire our thinking. And that's got to be fun to do. Just get on Google and see what we can discover. And once we've created a whole bunch of possibilities, at that point with our teams, sit down and have a look at it and say, well, what do we think will work? What can help that decision is the third thing here, which is publish social research. Often, our issues have been studied by academics, and they've done research into what works. So go find that out too. That's a great and simple example of preliminary research. And then there's this one here I'm circling now, human-centered research. Here we are. We think we're going to change those people, but we're not them, and we don't even know them, but we're going to change them. That's a very arrogant starting point. Let's start by getting to know the people. Let's learn a bit about their worlds. And there's a whole lot of material in this guide on how to do that, that preliminary social research that need not be complicated or academic, but it helps us think into people's shoes, helps us understand their worlds. And here's a really important question. What would they welcome? What are those people looking for that they could welcome, that we could provide? If our actors, the people we hope will act, will welcome something and we can provide it, that is a fantastic way to design our efforts. So could we go and interview them? Can we have a focus group? Can we do some field observation and go watch people doing something? Can we try it ourselves? Can we do a co-design project where we sit down with some landholders and create the project together? So, I'm not going to go on about these, but these are very well-established social research methods that we can adopt into our projects. Probably the simplest one is interviews. Just go and interview people online. During COVID, we can look people up online and have a little chat to them. And a lot of people are very happily put up their hand for that. It shows we're interested in them. And so, a lovely example, simple one was a few years ago for Waverley Council. They were looking on reducing rates of contamination in recycling bins in apartment blocks. The team went and interviewed 42 recyclers in apartment blocks, knocked on the door and interviewed them. So that's great. And it's just weird. And that puts us into their shoes. We start to see things from other people's points of view. We have no right to do this work unless we've really got to know the people that we're working with, and we can create something that will fit and is welcomed into their lives, or it just isn't going to last. It's not going to be adopted. There's more detail here to try to demystify these methods. And there's even there's examples there. How many people should be in our samples, and a nice starting point questionnaire of questions that we could walk away with. Sandy, I really want to acknowledge your head nodding. That's great. You're really giving me a lot of good feedback. Thank you. Thank you, everyone else. How are we doing, folks? How's their energy level? It's all good? Okay, great. Good. Fantastic. So, there's a whole lot of questions we can pose, and we can construct a questionnaire or an interview format out of some of these questions. And then who to interview, and then a little bit about all of this. So these things are really they're applied common sense. You don't need to be an expert to go and do this type of research. So now, good. And then there's field observation. One of the funniest and most powerful studies ever done into litter research was Rob Curnow's work back in 1998, where they had people on walkie-talkies, and they waited until they saw someone litter, and then they got on their walkie-talkie, and their colleague interviewed that person 5 minutes later. So it was absolutely the most breakthrough research that really helped. That it was partly based on field observation. So, really learning how to get into people's worlds. So I'm going to not talk any more about that, but it's the starting point. It will give us so many ideas, particularly when we look at other people all around the world who are working on this. You know, what's something happened in Western Australia or Seattle or, you know, London or somewhere. It's kind of mind-blowing when we get all these examples. Now I wanted to mention that, and there's one more thing I want to mention before we have a little break and a discussion, and that is, sorry, don't look, you'll go crazy. Good. Oh, field testing, that's the second thing. All right. So we were really, really focused in this project for the Environment Trust on how to tweak our process so we're liable to output a good answer. It's almost like we're creating a machine. Our project is a machine. We're designing a machine that will spit out the best strategy, the best project design. And part of it is that research. The other thing is field testing. And that is, okay, all right, we've thought about this. We've got a whole bunch of hunches now. Let's make a rapid field test of our idea and push it out into a tiny proportion of our target audience. Let's do a rapid prototyping in one street, or in 6 farms, or in 6 houses, or on a tiny scale. Or, you know, I did this a few years ago for the city of Sydney. We chose one bicycle route, and we got out there and we rapidly put together a little community engagement project around ringing your bell. So we got out there on one bike route and made the whole thing happen, but in a really rough way without being highly polished, with the right signs and the right people and the free bells and the coffee. And so we trialed the idea. Now, that's field testing. It's also called prototyping or rapid prototyping. And the idea is take a rough version of our key engagement idea into the world and see how it goes. See what people think about it. Does it make a difference? Sure, you know, we'll give people, we have a little, maybe our idea is a public stall that involves free coffee and plants, and people take the plant home and plant it in the garden. All right, let's do it on a small scale. And afterwards, let's see how many people planted their plants. Let's follow them up. How many people planted their plants 2 weeks later? Actually, the plant was in the garden and getting watered properly. So, oh, now, okay, people either did do it or didn't do it, and now we can have a conversation about what would help it work better. How can we do it better in version 2? That's how designers design a new kettle. They don't make 1 million kettles because they think they've got a groovy kettle design. They make 1 kettle, and then they make 5 kettles, and then they make 10 kettles, and they trial them out and give them to people, see if they like the kettle. So when you think about it, this has got to be the world's best risk management to make sure we haven't wasted our money and effort by finding out what works before we go and do the big launch and print everything in full color and, you know, all that stuff, and make videos and spend all of our money, find out what works. The time I did it for the city of Sydney, was great because we improvised. We discovered that, let me just see if I've got any pictures here. Oh no, I don't. But when we did it, we improvised. We discovered ways to improvise new ideas on the spot. It turned out to be a chance. It was a very creative. Doing it was creative in itself, and it gave us ideas that we would never have thought of that we could use in future. So we improvised solutions to problems on the spot. We found out some of our ideas didn't work at all, so they're in the bin. We found out other things were really successful, so we keep them, work on those, and we started having conversations. And we're talking to bicyclists. We're having the conversations where we learn and get inspired by more ideas. And that conversation with one bicyclist might be the spark of a solution that works better that we can apply in future. So yeah, look, it's, you know, I just want to leave that with you as a critical component of doing this work well, and risk assurance, and also very creative and productive and imaginative thing that we can do. Can't always do it. I mean, but surprising how often we can. I mean, I know some councils are rolling out big FOGO programs. Down here in Wollongong, the council started with one neighbourhood, and then they did another neighbourhood, and then they did another neighbourhood. So they learnt their way into it. They were able to change it as they went and tweak it and improve it. So I wanted to leave that with you now. Alrighty, we've been talking for quite a while now. Who's up for a little break? Who'd like a break? Anyone want a break? Little break? What about a 10-minute break, and we'll come back, and at that point we'll have a conversation.
Okay, so everyone, welcome back. What we're going to do now is a Q&A session with Les, and the beautiful thing about this chat function is that it means we can take a whole heap of questions from people in a really short period of time, and you can have a moment to simply ask your question or raise something that you would like Les to discuss. Because obviously he's covered a lot of things in this resource, so there's a whole lot of things that you might be thinking about. So please use the chat function now to start putting your questions in, and I will give you a few moments and I will start asking Les those questions on your behalf. So we've got a great question here. Thank you very much from Alex Lynch from the Ocean Action Pod. So Les, your first question is, are there strategies that work better for children instead of adults?
Well, let me think. I reckon if you were to ask an 8-year-old, a bunch of 8-year-olds, what they would really love, then let me think, what do you get? You get games, you get treasure hunts, you get competitions, you get anything where it's active and they get to prove themselves and they have a heck of a lot of fun. And when you think about it, we could kind of learn a lot from 8-year-olds when we're designing adult things. So we build more fun into them. But it's got to be easy to work with kids, because if it's fun, they won't be able to stay away from it. And we certainly can't do serious things with kids, but it opens up a whole world of possibilities in terms of, you know, competition and games and delight and activity. So yeah, I think with kids, just have a heck of a lot of fun and they will come.
Great, thank you very much, Les. Okay.
And pizza.
And ice cream, that's right. Okay, we've got a lot of great questions coming through now. So Liz is asking about what's the starting point for facilitating that conversation with a group who are used to doing something in a particular way, and you know that they need to improve the way that's done. What's a good starting point that you would suggest to work with a group with sort of a set way of doing things?
Oh, okay. Well, look, you could probably start with what's not working for you. What are the things what are the things you want that you're not getting out of the current system? And that's our starting point. But you need to flip pretty quickly to, well, what could it look like what would something look like if you were getting what you wanted? If you were getting the results that you wanted? How could things be changed? And you'll always find in any group of 10 people, there's a couple of people who are ahead of the others. They've already tried things out. They're interested. They're really happy to talk about these things. And those people draw the others up to where they are. And then, yeah, and you get a couple of really grumpy people, but you know what? No one will like them. So the focus will still go on the really positive people in the group. So facilitating a conversation where people, without being told what to think or what to do, where they look at, here's how I manage my property now, here's how I manage my water, or you know, my fox problem. What's working, what's not working, what would you like it to be like? Have you heard of anything that works? And just see what they create themselves.
That's great. Thank you, Les. Yep. Yep, it's all about showing the knowledge in the room, and it takes that pressure off you, which is a great thing. Another wonderful question, Anne Abbott from the Community Gardens Network and Sustainable Schools Network.
Hi, Anne.
She's really on board with the power of conversation and sees this as a big strength. So Les, what are your top tips to help network meetings have better conversations and better peer-to-peer discussion and learning?
Okay, so, all right, so firstly, before anything happens, blow their minds with something. So give them some sort of presentation or some really exciting idea from someone else that just kind of gets their mind zinging a bit and opens up possibilities, and then they'll really want to talk. So put on a bit of a show for the first 10 or 15 minutes. And then the conversation will naturally start to happen. It's good to have questions to pose, which are intriguing. All you have to do is pose those questions and people will start to come up with answers and share those answers together. It's even better to make it very purposeful, for there to be a solution that needs to be created and let people brainstorm the solution. As soon as people are working on a question or a problem, it's almost impossible to make them stop. They just want to keep burrowing away at it. And then all we have got to do is facilitate it so that people aren't dominating each other and we're getting all the ideas down. And working in small groups is the way to do that. So, but yeah, I think start by blowing their minds.
Great. Thank you, Les. So we've got a question that I'm quite happy to chip in with, which is about how do you measure results of behaviour change to help inform for the next time. And I'll share the link in the chat, but what I was saying to someone else in the chat is that this resource that Les has developed came from a project that Les and myself and others from A Squared, E Squared, Lynn McLaughlin, Wendy Goldstein have been working on for the New South Wales Environmental Trust to reframe and redesign environmental education programs to integrate all of these theories: social change theory, value theory, transformational learning for sustainability. So this resource that Les has been showing you came from a more technical, bureaucratic style, but very useful resource that we developed for the New South Wales Environmental Trust, which was designed so that people planning for an environmental education program and filling out the grant forms have all that background behind them. And in there's a section on evaluation. Now, obviously, evaluation is part of all of this. When you're doing the research that Les was talking about, that early research about finding out more about your target audience and doing a pilot program, that is all evaluation. Evaluation is not just at the end. So Landcare Australia, I would recommend you have a look at that. I will post that link up, and also have a look at the way that the environmental education grants form is designed, because it steps you through, and it's really a process that anyone doing an environmental education program should step through so that they can evaluate those changes. So I hope that helps. And we've got another great question from Peter White. So Peter, Peter's talking about ethical implications. Now, Peter's from academia, and she's, she's sort of raising the issue of consent for research and all of those very important things that have to be done for academic research. Do you have any comments on that in regards to environmental educators on the ground and how they do their research?
So if we start applying academic standards to our research, we will never do it. It will take forever. It will cost a fortune. It doesn't fit our world. Our world is we have very little time to put these things together. We need to get out there quickly. All we're after is insight. We're after some insights from things. So we may very well have a paragraph of consent or ask people to agree to something beforehand, but don't make it an elongated or complicated process, or it will simply never occur. Essentially, it's about having conversations and listening to conversations, asking people questions, hear what they say, and it's not like formal research. Its sole function is, did we get an insight or not? Not whether it's statistically valid and whether it's got huge sample sizes and all of that stuff. It's just, its sole function is to give us insights and inspirations. And that it can be very informal. It could just be conversations around while eating sausages together. But from our point of view, we're going and getting answers to questions while we're doing that. So yeah, don't make it complicated, guys. And Peter, I appreciate the world that you work in, but if we start applying those standards to what we're all doing professionally, it's not a recipe for success.
Thank you, Les. Now, we've got another question that's very, very relevant to what you're doing, Les, because since COVID, you have been running online workshops almost every day. So Barbara Jenkins has a great question here that she's running, you know, council workshops and info sessions, and they get a lot of interest in bookings. But then the problem is, you know, you get that high dropout rate of like 50% or more, despite several reminder emails, you know, including one on the day. So what are your tips as someone who does this all the time? What are your tips for ensuring that people actually stick to that commitment and turn up?
Okay, well, you know, the number one tip is that people pay something. So if people book via Eventbrite, for instance, and they pay a quite token amount, might be $5 or $10 or something, to participate in these things, they're going to turn up. It will be hard for them not to turn up. Things that are completely voluntary, the dropout rates are just normal. And it's you know, all we can do is make it sound like what we're doing is unbelievably interesting. And even though the most exciting thing that will happen when they get there is everyone talks together and interacts, there still has to be a very exciting hook. So you just have to fall over backwards to make it surprising and different and thrilling and, you know, unmissable hook. But if people pay a little bit beforehand, that kind of locks them in. That's all I can offer at this point.
Yes, and look, and I acknowledge that with council programs, you know, we're running, they're being run for free. However, you can get creative with things, because what Les is talking about is really getting people to commit, and it could be the kind of thing where you say that to participate, you commit to paying, you know, $2, and all of that money that council raises is going directly into, say, you know, a charitable program, something like that. So, you know, so people, so you overcome those issues of, you know, well, I'm a ratepayer and I'm already paying for this.
Yeah, yeah. And also it's really good too, because if we realize, oh my goodness, I'm asking people to pay money, it means I better make sure I'm giving them value. Forces us to think about their value instead of our value, what we want out of it, which is good to get an audience. No, that won't work. We've actually got to give them value. So it changes our thinking a bit.
And we've got some great, Barbara Jenkins, thanks, is making some, Mel's put some comments in there about some of those issues. So look, it is always tricky, but, you know, we just all do our best. Okay, so all right, so Paul Clemens, thanks Paul, he has a question about that important thing of how do you help people not go back to the previous habits that you were trying to get them to change, and you know, there's and the issues around doing that when the results aren't visible or don't give that instant gratification for people. So I suppose, you know, issues of efficacy and things like that. So what are your tips there, Les, for getting people to stick with those habits, the new habits?
Investigate and take really seriously about why they started. The set of people who reached the point of giving it a go, but then gave up, is a really critical set to go and learn about it, investigate and understand, because we have to make something that doesn't do that. And it's working with those people will give us the answer. What would we have had to have done to make this a thing that you would stick to? And there's two things will happen. One is we'll find out the idea was such a bad idea in the first place. We should have worked on something else, or we'll get the tip or the trick. But it will only happen by a really fine and conversation with those people, where we listen carefully to what they said and what didn't work for them. And you know, there's no instant answer. It's what comes out of that intention to really go and learn from those people, and realizing how important they are as a group, because they actually gave it a go, which means everything was lining up beautifully, but then it didn't work. So let's go find out. I hope that's an answer.
That's great. Yep, it's all about our relationships with our target audience. So the stronger relationships we can have with those people, the easier life becomes for us.
So just to make the point, the other thing is to say, oh, they didn't do it, so there must be something wrong with my language or the way I promoted it or something like that. But no, it'll be, what was that technology that you asked them to adopt? can you redesign it? Not find another way to get them to use a bad technology, but to go change it so it fits. Fitness, like, it's a really important idea there. Can we? Sorry, I got carried away.
No, yeah, that's great, Les. And I suppose this is where doing a pilot, doing that simple, low cost, quick pilot to see what works and to be able to go back and ask people, that is just so critical, so that you haven't invested you know, a year of planning to then discover that, like Les says, there's some critical little component there in what you're asking them to do, you know, when you've rolled the whole thing out. So yeah, doing a pilot is really important part of that. So great, we've got a question from Andy McQuee. Thank you. Oh wow, this is a can you see this tricky question, Les?
Change behaviour when we're promoted as a great thing, but further research reveals we should stop doing it because it's harmful. You mean, we've got everyone to do it and it turns out to be a bad idea? That's embarrassing, isn't it? Are you thinking about something in particular, Andy? Unmute, Andy.
Sorry, Les, I typed it in. Yeah, I'm thinking of MWO, the mixed waste or organics that we have been promoting for farmers to put on their crops, and we've set up whole businesses to process mixed waste organics. It's the FOGO, otherwise known as FOGO, food food organics and garden organics. And now we find that it's not suitable for use on crops, and because it contaminates the soil. So how do we now re-engage with those people that have set up their businesses to support that recycling effort, and now find it's bad for human health?
Okay, that's interesting. So perhaps you could invite them all into a project to find out how to make it not toxic. So yeah, so we all have a problem. Let's all sit down together and solve it together. So make a co-design of the next step. Not think you've got to create the solution yourself, but you know, you're all in the boat together.
That's great. Okay, thanks, Les. We've got another great question here from Cribbo from the Green Living Centre in the Inner West Council. So they've been using social media a lot, as we all have been, to keep in touch with the community, and she's asking for tips on how to use this for behaviour change. I think she already knows, he or she, they already know what the answers are, because they're talking about videos and photos to how to tell those stories. So what other ideas do you have, Les, on using social media for change?
Well, actually, did you see that meme that was going around where people got dressed up to put out their recycling bins? You see that one? So people love to show off and be clever at home. I reckon one idea is, instead of us showing people what to do, what if we had a competition where people made videos of them doing it at home in their own special way? How do you do it? Like, I don't know what it is, whatever the thing is. So say it's, how do I recycle my organic waste at home? How do you do it? How do you do it in your kitchen? Show us your technique. Or let's have a competition for the most interestingly different benchtop caddy. Or let's liberate that creativity that's inherent in people sitting at home wondering what they're doing. And instead of us telling people what to do, people are telling each other what to do and inspiring each other with what to do. And that's way better behaviour change than us trying to talk people into stuff. So yeah, I'd liberate all that creative energy that's sitting there at home. There are examples of that, which is, and it's always really fun to look at because it's quirky.
That's great. Thank you, Les. So everyone, we are probably going to wrap up very shortly because the webinar is finishing at 11. And we have a quest. So if you've got any remaining questions, please pop them in quickly. And Mel wants to know, Les, what are your tips for using humour The formal wear bin night was a great one. Any other tips on?
All right. So, what I think is to practice the art of, as we sit down with our little teams, trying to think of things, is to practice the art of really having a hell of a lot of fun ourselves. So, like to wear party hats and all sorts of tricks, and make it a delight to work together, and to go into the crazy space ourselves. So as soon as we start coming up with crazy left field or impossible ideas, or pretend we have fairy wands and use those kinds of tricks, we'll start laughing. And once we start laughing in our team as we're trying to create something to roll out, we know we're on a winner. Like, keep following that trend, keep following. If it makes us happy, it's going to make other people happy and laugh as well. And see where it goes, and then have the courage to do things that might appear to be completely insane. So to be more playful, just forget about forget all this stuff now, and just don't be logical. Just to muck around, go completely insane, and use all sorts of tips or tricks or fancy dress, or do, everyone does an interpretive dance of what they think it would look like, or, go nuts in our little team meetings, and don't do it in the office. Go somewhere else, have lots of coffee, or I don't know how to do it on COVID. And, but think about it, there's no off-the-shelf answers to something like that, but there are off-the-shelf answers, but how we can make ourselves more likely to come up with fun stuff. And the answer is to be having more fun while we're trying to think of it. So, yeah.
Thank you, Les. That's great. Now, we've got a great question from Joanne Talou, and she wants to know, for you to give some tips on what works well for getting people to start taking action on climate change. And I know that you do a lot of work with a lot of different groups around Australia who are all working in different ways to help solve the climate crisis. What are some of your, maybe some examples there of what people are doing to engage others on, on the climate solutions?
Okay, all right. So there's two kinds of things. One is advocacy and those things that Get Up and those organised like that, ACF and so on. That's their thing. They're really good at that. And so convince people to get involved in that is one thing. They know how to turn on all the instances and get action happening. But the other thing is, how do we adopt actions ourselves in our lives that make a difference? And the answer is, don't ask people to solve climate change. Instead, say, what is the thing we want them to do? What is our project going to be about? And it might just be about, it's always got, in the end, it has to be about one thing. So the thing that we do might be, to install solar PV panels. Okay, we are now running a solar PV panel project. Our project is about solar PV panels. It's not about climate change. It's about the action of ringing up someone and getting them to come and give you a quote on installing panels. That's the project. And so don't frame it as being about, we're all going to solve climate change, because that's actually not what you're doing. What you're doing is getting people to install solar PV panels. So move away from the huge, enormous, fluffy, impossible to solve problem, and start with the thing that the person can actually do, and build the whole project around doing that thing. Build the sausage sizzle and the brochures and the banners and everything around the solar PV panel installation thing. And people will do that for a whole bunch of reasons that might only peripherally be about climate change. They'll do it for all the really good reasons why it's worth having solar PV panels. Oh yeah, I'm also solving climate change, but actually I'm doing a whole lot of other, I'm saving money, I'm looking good, all sorts of reasons. And then, do you see what I mean? It's about our strategy. Don't try to make people join the climate change the world thing, because that's just too big. Instead, focus on what is the individual specific action. Make that the center of all of our thinking for this project, and build everything around it. Do you see the point?
Yeah, I think that's great, Les. And that's a great way to sum up everything that this is all about. So unless there are any further questions, I would just really like to thank everyone on behalf of AAEE New South Wales for attending this session. I would like to thank Les Robinson so much for his time in doing this for the association. We really appreciate all your efforts, Les, because you are the guru on this, and you're so kind in sharing your knowledge. So Mel will email everyone some links and, you know, follow up for all of you guys. This has been recorded, so she'll be putting that on the A2E2, a link to the A2E2 YouTube channel, so that you can, you know, catch up, or for anyone who came in late. And there's lots of different thanks coming through. So yeah, really appreciate your time this morning, guys. And this is a great resource. It's free. Use it, get into it, because it really is just such a better way to think about how we do things for our environmental action projects.